I'm here with Professor Dan Ariely, a professor on behavioral economics. Professor Ariely, Dan it is. You often speak about decision making, how we make decisions. So please let the indecisive ones of us know, how do we make decisions?
So there's one way to make decisions the right way, and there are many ways to make decisions the wrong way, and sadly making them the right way is very, very tough, so we opt to doing them the wrong way, and there are many ways to take decisions in the wrong way. One of them, for example, is to rely on a gut intuition or our emotion, and often when we rely on our emotions we make mistakes. Another mistake we make is we don't think long term, we think short term. Another mistake we make is that we don't think about all the alternatives. We think about just a few alternatives. And a final one, and there are many more, is that as the decision becomes more complex, we don't know what to do, so we take the path of least resistance. We do the least amount of effort possible. And from that perspective, actually, there's a very nice change in the Israeli decision about organ donation. I don't know if you saw it, but there's a proposition for a law now that is going to switch from opt-in to opt-out. That everybody will be assumed to be an organ donor, and you would have to say you don't want to be an organ donor. And the idea is that it's a big decision, it's a complex decision, you don't know what to do. So if you're in a situation you have to choose into it, you'll probably not do it because it's so complex. But if you have to choose not to do it, and it's so complex, you'll probably not make a decision, and therefore you'll become an organ donor. That's a very nice use of a behavioral insight into making a better policy.
Now what about marriage? Marriage, deciding who we marry, is a pivotal decision that we make in our lives, and we make it based on emotion.
Yes, and there are many, many mistakes in deciding who to get married with, and here's a few ways to think about these mistakes. And again, there's not just one mistake. One of them is that we really don't have that much experience. How many people do we date before we decide? I mean, we might test drive 10 cars before we decide which car to buy, and that's a short-term decision. Before we decide who to marry, we don't test drive that many people. Unless you live in Tel Aviv. My understanding is in Tel Aviv the test driving is more extensive. The other thing is that we fail to realize that in the long term, our emotions will change. So you fall in love with somebody, you feel good, and you say, I will feel like this every morning for the rest of my life. The reality is you wouldn't. You feel this much in love for a while, then love goes down, and something else hopefully will come up instead of it, but not every time. There's a beautiful study looking at Indian weddings, marriages, and they look at what you call love marriages and arranged marriages. And when people get married, the love marriages love each other more than the arranged marriages. But what happens over time? The love marriages become less and less in love, and the arranged marriages become more and more in love, and they cross in year 3, by the way. Now, it's not a perfect experiment. It's not an experiment because you don't assign people, you get married on love, you get married on arranged marriages, but it tells you something about our inability to predict when we're in love how we would feel in the long term. We take our short-term emotions into account, we think we'll feel this way, sadly we don't.
So how should we make decisions when it comes to marriage?
So the question is, how do you get long-term signals about your compatibility? And I would give you the Jewish answer for this, which is ask your mother. And what I mean by that is that if you're in love, if you're infatuated, you cannot see long-term compatibility beyond the glasses of being infatuated. But somebody who cares about you but is not infatuated is going to be better able to judge the long-term compatibility. So ask your mother, ask friends, ask people who don't experience your emotion and can look at the situation in more objective terms.
Now, many often say that the more choices we have, the unhappier we are because it gives us a sense that we cannot decide, we cannot choose, and that makes us unhappy.
So in multiple ways. First of all, when you have lots of decisions, it's hard to make a choice, and therefore we're conflicted. And then on top of that, if the decisions stay with us, if the other alternatives stay with us, we keep on thinking all the time, should I have made a different decision? Think about, again, just because we think about marriage, think about starting to dating somebody when you know that online dating is just one click away and you could switch your partner with somebody else very, very easily. How happy are you going to be with them? In fact, I think that one of the things that happen in marriages is you spend a lot of money, you stand in front of lots of people, and you say, we're going to commit to each other. Now, it doesn't happen, it doesn't work all the time, but by doing that, you basically say, I'm going to stop looking around. And by doing so, I'm limiting my ability to compare yourself to your other alternatives all the time, and therefore you actually become happier with that situation. So the two things here, one thing is the multiple options, which just makes you think about decision and make it very, very tough. The other one is the possibility of switching all the time, make it much, much harder to settle for one thing and start enjoying it for real for a long time.
So basically, by limiting our options, we will become happier.
Yes, now, of course, if you limit your options to very few undesirable options, that's not good. But at some level, we have too many options and we need to limit them, and we need to decide that these are the options we're going to be happy with.
Now, you're also on a panel that discusses honesty and dishonesty, and you've been quoted saying that people are actually dishonest, that there's some form of cheaters.
Yes, so we do experiments, and I tempt people to steal money from me, and I see many times that lots of people steal a little bit of money. In Hebrew, we have this expression, le'agel pinot, to round corners, which is it captures this essence very, very nicely, that people have the ability to cheat a little bit and feel good about themselves. I mean, let me ask you, have you told any white lies recently?
Sure.
Yeah, so you might tell people that the meal they cooked is fantastic, or if you're late for a meeting, you're probably not saying, you know what, I decided to leave late because I didn't care so much about it. You say, no, the traffic was particularly heavy, or if you bought something expensive and you don't want to tell your significant other. I mean, we tell all kinds of lies. We're willing to round corners all the time, driving above the speed limit, texting while we're in stop sign and not maybe driving. I mean, we do all kinds of things that are kind of on the border of being honest and dishonest.
Telling a bride she looks beautiful, telling a mother her baby's super cute.
That's right. The bride looking beautiful, by the way, is an old Jewish debate about that. And I think it was Hillel and Shammai that argued whether you should do it or not. And one of them, I forgot which, said that a bride is always beautiful in the eyes of the groom, so it's never a lie. It's never a lie. But it is an interesting thing how we tell lots of white lies, but it doesn't end there. There's lots of things we're willing to lie a little bit on. I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs recently. Entrepreneurs have a real question about how you project future income or future growth. And what do you think? Do they represent the data to their investors in an objective way, in an over-optimistic way? Over-optimistic way. And you can think from there all kinds of things in which we want to see the data in a certain way, and we use our flexibility to convince ourselves that this is actually okay.
Professor Ariely, this was very interesting. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.